Today, I'm really thrilled to meet with Florian Graillot, a great friend of mine who is an investor and the co-founder of Astorya.vc, which is invested in Seed InsurTech startups across Europe. With Florian, we will cover a number of topics, including who he is, why he set up Astorya.vc, and how we see the world of corporate venturing today and tomorrow. So welcome to Scouting for Growth. Today I'm really thrilled to be with one of my great friends, an investor that I respect tremendously, Florian Graillot from Astorya.vc. Welcome, Florian.
Hi, Sabine. Thanks a lot for having me and really looking forward to having that discussion together.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to have you today because, as you know, I am trying to demystify this world of corporate venturing. And as an investor, an expert in the field of insurtech, but fintech as well, I've looked at the website. You're actually looking for tech startups which can change the world of insurance. So like me, you don't just focus on insurtech. You're looking at fintech, wealth tech, health tech, so many different areas of tech to solve for our industry, which is insurance. I'm really thrilled to have you with us and sharing your insight and experience.
Thanks a lot. And I hope it will be interesting for people that will listen to our discussion, and obviously happy to reconnect with any of them around the topic that you mentioned, because I agree, insurtech is way broader than just insurance, and that's what is exciting around insurance, is that basically it could be connected to almost any industry. So that's why we are working so hard on building the next insurance generation.
Yeah. So let's get started. Florian, can you tell us who you are and what got you into insurance actually, and then tech for insurance?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Long story short, I've been investing in tech startup for 15 years now. I started as a pure tech seed investor in France. And then I had the opportunity to join AXA Ventures in the early days. So that's how I connected with insurance and more generally insurtech. And there I was in charge of investing at seed stage in insurtech across Europe. And for 3 years now, I've been running my own VC firm, Astorya.vc, which I built with my partner Jan. And again, we have exactly the same investment scope. InsurTech across Europe at seed stage. I guess that we will discuss further why we had this specific positioning, which I believe is addressing a gap on the market. But long story short, tech investment is my DNA. Insurance is much more opportunistic because I had, again, the opportunity to start in that industry through AXA Ventures. And I believe that we are still in early days. So that's why I'm still very excited and very enthusiastic about that industry.
So some of the experts say that, we are scratching the surface in insurtech right now. We have not done more than 1% of what can be done to transform our industry. What do you think, Florian?
Yeah, so one part of that sentence is true. If you have a look at, again, InsurTech Europe, that's our, let's say, that's where we are interested in, and we have a lot of data. So if you take 10 years of InsurTech across Europe, the truth is that more than half of rounds done since inception and every year are around distribution. So in a sense, you can say it's just the surface, it's just the front end with the final customer. I get it. Though behind the scene, it has, I believe, a dramatic impact first on, let's say, how the market is structured, because we start having insurtech startups that get as many new customers in 1 year as tier one players. At least in France, we have this example of Luco last year around home insurance that got 80,000 new customers, which is close to what the tier one mutual generated on several business lines during the same period of time. So long story short,
impressive.
That is competing directly with tier one players. So it has an impact on the stock of customers that a tier one player can get and can build. And if you have a look as well, you see that more and more reinsurance players are working directly with this kind of insurtech, kind of bypassing insurance companies. So long story short, there is a beginning of trend here as well, where there is a competition, direct competition between insurance players and reinsurance companies. So that's for the first part. Even if it's around distribution, it has an impact behind the scene. That's the first point. And the second point is that the more we are working in that industry and the more the time spends, the more we realize that insurtech companies are going closer to the core system of insurance companies, meaning actuaries, underwriting, and so on. There are a few examples here. Envelope risk around cyber insurance, for instance. You have Accurate around underwriting. I think about Quanti, which is a tool for actuarial people. So long story short, it starts to entering a bit deeper into the value chain, becoming very specific. And I believe that we will see more and more of this kind of enterprise software for insurance companies in the coming years, because now that a lot of money is invested in that space, that we have a few very success story, let's say, in that space, it will attract very strong entrepreneurs that don't want just to address the surface of things, but want to go deeper, address real things into the value chain.
You know, I remember when I moved myself into InsurTech, which was in 2015, I had made the choice to move from actually fintech to InsurTech. So, you know, left the big job, went to work for a fintech. And then after that first year, you know, that year working for that fintech in 2015, at the end of 2015, I said, you know, the things called tech for fin has to happen in insurance. And I decided to become an advisor and, you know, talk to various people actually in the Lloyd's market to see how they did innovation. And I remember seeing AXA building the Camet fund and you guys starting the whole process of venturing in 2015. And I thought, you know what, I'm probably going on the right path. Which takes me to, tell me, Florian, you moved from AXA to building Astorya. What was your path? Why Astorya?
Yeah, I believe it was two things. The first one, a gap on the market, so purely opportunistic opportunity. And the second point is much more around my DNA. It's funny because as an investor, we are investing in entrepreneurs, but most of investors on the ground are much more coming from the financial side. At seed stage, it's not about money, it's about building things. And I believe that having such an entrepreneurial background makes a lot of sense, attract entrepreneurs as well, and make us better understand how tough it is to grow from 0 to 1, because we have done it on our side for our own VC firm. So it's a very specific kind of ventures. But anyway, we grew Astorya.vc, which didn't exist 4 years ago. And now we are soon to raise Astorya.vc 2. So long story short, we are growing. We have made a few investments. We are now the most active insurtech investor across Europe. So we have delivered, and I believe it's related to my DNA. Back to the market opportunity, it was quite interesting, and I believe it's still relevant right now. When we had a look at the insurtech investment in 2017, and when we had the idea of Astorya.vc, we realized that most of investment were coming either from fintech funds, which, by the way, are too big to invest at seed stage. They are managing 150, 200, maybe 400 tomorrow morning. So a lot of money managed there that by design, disable them from investing, let's say, 1 or 2 million euros in very small pre-revenues or with very limited revenues companies. So that was the first, let's say, flow of money. The second one was corporates. And it's quite funny because, as you mentioned, in 2014, 2015, there were only few corporates investing in that space. Then there was a huge wave of corporates entering investment, and all of them started investing at seed stage because obviously there are so many seed companies that it's very easy to make a check and to invest in startup. The challenge is the next step. So it's very easy to invest at seed stage. It's really tough to build a sustainable companies. Long story short, most of them have kind of pivoted from seed stage to later stage investment. First, because they realize, again, and as I mentioned, that seed investment is not about money. And the second point is that beyond financial return, the truth is that they were expecting industrial strategic return as well. And here, the only way for them to work with the startup in which they have invested is when the company is mature enough to make it happen with the corporates. So long story short, and you can have a look at the trends, the more the InsurTech is growing, the more corporate VCs are investing at Series A, Series B, Series C investment. So again, fintech investors too big to invest at seed stage, corporate investors too interested in strategic return to invest very early. Long story short, these seed startups were just fueling their growth from seed investors that don't know anything about insurance. Hence, we believe that there was room for an InsurTech focused investor, and that's what we have delivered right now. And again, startup in which we have invested, they don't really care about our money. There is always a bigger fund than yourself on the market until you are SoftBank. But long story short, there is always somebody who is managing more money than yourself. So it's not about money. It's about industry focus, understanding, and capacity to accelerate the go-to-market, especially around enterprise software or B2B technologies.
So you highlighted quite a few interesting points. First, focus. Focus on a niche and own that niche. You are in InsurTech or tech for insurance. You actually also looking at seed funding for founders who actually understand that they want to build a sustainable business model and access market, because you are working with, amazing people in the industry who are themselves experts, have the network and can help your portfolio also access connections, which are, I think, very important part of the equation.
Yeah, definitely. It's always the same. It's funny because at the end of Q2 2021, I had a look at CB Insights, which reported investment in fintech worldwide. And then they had the split per industry or sub-vertical. And funnily, InsurTech was only 10% of fintech. So long story short, if you are a fintech investor, you commit only 10% of your time to InsurTech. On our side, we are doing only InsurTech, meaning that 100% of our time is dedicated to insurance. That's how and why I believe our insurance investors are investing in Astorya.vc, because they know that we will spend 100% of our time on their topics and will not consider InsurTech as a topic among a few others. And on the other hand, it's maybe 10% of fintech investment, but it's a market big enough to attract a lot of money, to make huge businesses, attract very smart entrepreneurs. Again, in Europe only, it's 1,300 billion euros of premium per year. So that's a huge market where you don't necessarily need to own 10% of the market to make a big company. Even 1% of the market is huge. So long story short, we believe, and I believe that Astorya.vc demonstrated that capacity to make InsurTech a thesis and a vertical on its own. And I believe that's what entrepreneurs are interested in when they reach out to us. They know, again, that we will spend 100% of our time on their topic, discussing with potential customers for them. It's not only on Monday, it's every day of the week, focusing on insurance. And I believe it makes a huge difference. Again, especially at seed stage, where it's building, structuring, finding the famous product market fit.
So one thing you actually highlighted is the size of the market, right? Insurance is 5 trillion globally, and a big chunk is, as you said, in Europe. Now, looking at the number from an InsurTech viewpoint, I was looking at the numbers just before going onto our call. 13 billion has been invested in InsurTech to date, which is October 2021. And that represents around, I think we are around 50 billion globally of investment in InsurTech to date. So not insignificant, and that number is probably double the number we saw last year, Florian. So as you said, massive market. We don't need to be elephant to actually do very well in that market. So I want to ask you, what's your view on our growth prospect in InsurTech? And what are your investment thesis? What is your investment thesis?
Yeah, so first, on the figures, that's true that we've seen huge rounds recently. I believe that it would be a mistake to consider that it's very easy to raise money right now. Obviously, if you have strong figures, you can raise crazy rounds, 100, 200, 300, whatever, 100 million euros you can raise. But that's for a very limited amount of startups which have delivered huge things and huge KPI. It's true as well that for a pre-launch startup, it's maybe easiest now than it used to be to raise, let's say, 2 or 3 million euros on just a deck. But in the middle, that's what we see on the market. It's still tough for companies raising, let's say, from 3 to 10 million euros because their investors are expecting KPI, a proof of product market fit, a beginning of traction, and so on. So long story short, it might be very easy to raise money at the very beginning. It might be very easy when you are big enough to attract a huge round from even private equity investors doing ventures. But in the middle, it's still challenging. And I believe that entrepreneurs and even corporates should keep that in mind. If you have a look at the figures, by the way, in Europe only, you can see that in Germany, in the UK, and in France, a lot of money was invested. But the truth is that it was highly concentrated. Maybe 5 or 6 rounds are taking 80% of the market.
You're absolutely right.
Euros. So that's to keep in mind. In terms of trends, I would say distribution again is very strong. We still see a lot of B2C companies raising a huge round, especially when they crack the distribution. I have in mind Hedvig from the Nordics that recently raised. I believe that Luco in France, which is leading in home insurance, will announce something by the end of the year. So you have big players that are growing. Get Safe in Germany announced a big round as well. So there is a bit of traction on direct to consumer. What we see as well, much more from the ground, is indirect distribution, embedded insurance. And beyond the buzzword, we start seeing very strong figures. Cover in Belgium earlier this year raised 25 million euros. We have invested in that space through WeCover in Spain, and they signed a partnership with Fnac, which is a huge entertainment marketplace in France, but not only, in Spain obviously as well, meaning that corporates are ready to partner with InsurTech startup, even small and seed startup, to deliver this kind of opportunity for them. So I believe it means something. And again, what is interesting is that it's coming from the market, not from the regulator, not from the corporate. It's coming from the marketplaces, the e-commerce website, the platforms that want to integrate insurance to get additional margin, and they just need InsurTech as the tech layer to connect to that insurance world. So that's the first trend we are very excited about. The second one, as I mentioned earlier, is all the enterprise software that could enable corporates do their job better, be more efficient, or, and that's the third trend, everything around new risks. Because when I mention new risk, I think about cybersecurity, I think about climate-related risks, I think about IT-based downtime, freelancer / new way of working, data privacy, and so on. And why I believe there is a room for innovation and growth here is that by design, these risks are surging and didn't really exist 10 years ago, meaning that corporates, insurance company, reinsurance company, don't have any competitive edge on the data. They don't have historical data because there is no historical data here, meaning that the challenge here is how you manage to leverage external data, new data sets to be able to assess these new risks. And there, that challenge, I believe, is easiest for a startup than for a corporate. It's due to their, let's say, competitive edge on attracting talents, people around AI, big data, and so on. So I really believe that there is an edge here for InsurTech. But again, it's not InsurTech against insurers. It's InsurTech enabling insurer address these risks. So we are very pushing in that direction. And by the way, we have invested in several of these topics, climate, cyber, IT, and more to come. But that's where we see something very interesting. And I believe that we will see more and more new risk and more very strong entrepreneurs trying to leverage very, let's say, real tech. That's what you highlighted from our website. That's something that we strongly believe since inception. In InsurTech, there is not only insurance, there is technology as well. And that's sometimes something entrepreneurs forget. We, as an investor, never forget it.
Super important, right? So when I look at the trends, you mentioned buzzword, embedded finance, embedded insurance. I would love if you could explain what that means. And, you highlighted a few opportunities. It would be helpful for our listener to really understand what that truly means and where we are going with embedded finance insurance.
Yes, so first, maybe in terms of definition, I believe that there are two words around that same trend: embedded insurance, open insurance. I believe it's the same word or the same reality, but it depends who is talking about it. If it's the market, the startup, the platform, usually it's embedded insurance. If it's the corporate world, they are using open insurance. But the truth is, and the reality is the same behind these two words, is how to offer insurance on top of a product or on top of a service. So long story short, that's what has been existed for a while around travel insurance, for instance. When you buy a ticket for your a train ticket or flight ticket or whatever, you can add on top of that travel insurance. It's embedded in the customer journey. And normally, if it's done well, if the product is relevant, conversion rates are higher when you are purchasing the product or the service than when you reconnect with the potential customer weeks after the purchase. The example I usually take is around e-bikes. Obviously, that's very small and tiny premiums. But anyway, if you are trying to reconnect with whoever has bought a bike a few weeks ago, it's challenging to convince them to put 5 or 10 euros per month on the bikes. If you embed it into the journey, especially around e-bikes that could cost 3,000 to 5,000 euros, when you spend 5,000 euros on your bike, it's very easy to understand why you should pay 5 euros a month for an insurance product. So here, there is no education needed. There is no explanation on why it makes it obvious. So here, it's much more pocket products. But I believe that there are a lot of other products that could be embedded as well, even in the SME world. As an entrepreneurs, we are managing our bank account, we are managing our cash position, we are managing our portfolio. These are entry points where you could push insurance. The example I have in mind is either the bank account or any HR software. Mm-hmm. On the HR software, you know how many people are working in the team. As soon as you have hired somebody, it's written there. And that's an opportunity to reconnect and say, hi, you grew from, let's say, 10 people in your team to 20. You should upgrade your insurance policy. and just click on that button. It's obvious. You don't need to interact again with your brokers or so on. So, and exactly the same on health things. If you have, let's say, a wearable where you're tracking your steps, your sport activity, and so on, that could be an opportunity to say, okay, maybe you are ready to have maybe a cheaper rate, again, sharing this data or agreeing, let's say, to engage on a more healthier behavior, and so on and so on. So I believe that there is a huge opportunity. That's for the market opportunity and the definition. And again, it's not only theoretical. We see more and more examples of that. The one I have in mind, because I believe it's the most impressive one, is in France, it's Ornicar. They used to be an e-driving school. So you might say, okay, what's the relationship with insurance? It's obvious. When you get your driving license, usually maybe you buy a car, and then you need a car insurance product. So they started offering car insurance to only young drivers at the beginning, and it was so successful that after 3 months of activity, they opened that opportunity to all the markets. And what was interesting is that they were very surprised. That's something they shared publicly. Most of their customers were not coming from their own brand. So it was not only embedded, but their brand was strong enough around the car ecosystem that it attracted people around their very new insurance product. But now they have something very clean, very embedded. So I really believe that's a very good example. Plus, we have figures that sustain this conviction that embedded insurance is working. And that's obviously a threat to insurance companies, because if you have a look at how things are going, the request is coming from the market, platform, e-commerce. They say, okay, we want to have insurance embedded. They go to InsurTech, which are just the tech layer that enabled online distribution, subscription, policy management, and so on. And these guys are coming to insurance companies saying, okay, we need capacity for that e-bike solution, for that health policy. Who can provide it? But that's the end of the journey. And then you need to be able to answer fast, and you need to be pluggable to that tech layer. Yeah. Hence, the challenge, the current challenge, I believe, in the industry around API, to be able to connect to that embedded insurance world, which is happening. So it's not when it will happen, it's happening, it's growing fast. And the challenge is to be able to plug to that ecosystem.
So when you actually look at this whole concept of embedded, 2 years ago, I had put together a piece of thought leadership around small and medium enterprise. And I spent a lot of time looking at Starling Bank and marketplace ecosystem, where, as you said, they actually have the HR capability, the accounting system, and all those things. And when I looked at that, I could see, imagine if there was also the insurance product as part of this ecosystem. And one of the startups which is part of the Starling Bank ecosystem is Nimbla for invoice insurance, actually. If somebody doesn't settle your invoice, which was really big actually during COVID. And I believe the Nimbla team did very well. Which takes me into, does embedded insurance or embedded finance require an ecosystem to play?
Yes, I would say it's not a requirement, because you build the ecosystem alongside the road. I believe that the only requirement is the tech capacity to plug to any ecosystem. And then you will either be reached out by platforms which are looking for this kind of opportunity, or you will build a business development team to look for these opportunities. But long story short, the only requirement I see is the tech layer, and then it's market opportunity, again, either coming from the market itself, or you create these opportunities by reaching out to platform. But the truth is that all these platforms which are embedding insurance or finance, they are not at the same level of maturity in terms of around that opportunity. If they all get that, especially insurance is a margin product, so it's not only revenues for them, but it's pure margin. They tend to be very focused on their own roadmap, which makes perfect sense. Hence, insurance might be, let's say, for the next 6, 12, or maybe later on their roadmap. So there is a challenge to say, okay, keep focusing on your roadmap. Everything is set up on our side. It's just one day of work on your side just to plug it to the environment, and it will start day one to generate margin for you. So I believe, hence my point around that capacity to connect around the ecosystem. The ecosystem itself will be built alongside the road and will be built alongside people or companies which are tech-enabled, because that's the challenge usually, and that's funny you raised the question this way. When we are discussing with insurance companies, you're right, usually they start by saying, okay, we will build an ecosystem around us. The truth is that usually on each topic, there is already an ecosystem which exists and which is around somebody else. They didn't wait for that insurance company around car or this one around health. It exists already. So the question is not how to rebuild it from scratch. That's an option. I believe it's a failure for sure. It's much more, okay, how can I plug to that ecosystem, and what's the value as an insurance company I can bring to that ecosystem so that they agree to have us around themselves. So I believe that's much more that point. And then it's the tech enabler. Again, technology is just a means, that's not a target. And here it's a perfect example. If you have the technology, the ecosystem is an option. If you don't have the technology, you can dream and talk about the ecosystem. It will never happen.
So you put that beautifully, because there is a change of mindset, right? Insurers want to build ecosystem around them, but a lot of ecosystem already exist: motor, health, home. And that is what we are seeing, and is, I think, why we are seeing so many blurred lines when we start looking at how you can deliver for smart home, for instance, or how can you deliver for the future of mobility, which you have touched upon with e-scooters, and or so many other things. We need to start from the customer needs, which takes me to why we are here. We are aiming to demystify what corporate venturing is. As you know, it includes 2 pillars: scouting for ventures and building ventures. You've built Astorya, so you are a venture builder, but you also are scouting for amazing companies where you are putting money, investing to make money. At the end of the day, we all want to make money. So I would love for you to explain your journey as a corporate venturist and what makes corporate venturing successful.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and I agree. There are 2 ways: either to scout for external opportunities where you can just partner, you can invest, or you can acquire these kind of companies, and we see a lot of this on the market right now. Otherwise, you can obviously try to build things internally. Maybe a few thoughts here. As I mentioned earlier, and it's related to Astorya.vc positioning, I believe that the challenge for those scouting innovation on the ground, they have 2 challenges. If they are investing, the major challenge for them is to convince entrepreneurs that they should let them enter the cap table, even at later stage. Because either in earlier days, entrepreneurs say, we don't want corporates because we fear that having one of them will close the door in terms of business to all the other players on the ground, which is not necessarily really true, or there is no KPI backing that feeling. So it's for early day startup. And for later on, if they have delivered good figures, they have too many investors interested in their venture compared to a room available on the cap table. So you need, as a corporate, to convince them that you could put something more than just investment. And that's the key challenge for them. It's to convince entrepreneurs. For pure innovation team, which are looking for potential partner or just ideas on the market, I believe that the challenge is to get clarity on what's happening. The point is that there are more and more startups on the ground. Every day we read crazy fundraising rounds. It's really tough, obviously, not to miss startups. When you are a corporate, obviously you are very biased because usually you just have a look at startups which reach out to you, which could be 20, 25% of the whole market. So there is the first challenge to make sure that you see everything. And the second challenge is to make the difference between shitty things, the noise, and what matters for your business. And that's something we try to be helpful on with our investor and our partners. Because again, we try to make sure that we see everything, and because we see everything, we are able on any topic to highlight, let's say, 1, 2, or 3 players which matter the most. There are a few examples I have in mind around InsurTech as a service. There are 25 players on the ground. Embedded insurance, there are 25 players on the ground. AI, computer vision for car claim, there are 20 players in Europe. So at the end of the day, should you work with Tractable or should you work with one of the 19 others, depending on where you're based, what's your project, how much money you have, what's your goal? So there are a lot of criteria here, and I believe it's not only about the startup itself. There are rating agencies that are rating the startup. It's very comfortable for corporates, but I believe it's related to the corporate itself as well. So it's not only the startup, it's not only the corporate, it's really how they match together what matters. And that's something we are trying to build based on the numerous startups that we've seen on the ground, learning from the corporate themselves, how to better assess the matching potential from one startup to a corporate. So that's for innovation. And in terms of internal entrepreneurship, so intrapreneurship, here I believe it's much more being very careful. It's really tough to succeed from the inside. I'm not saying that. I'm just repeating what I read in the Innovation Dilemma, written 25 years ago, still very accurate. So if you haven't read it, make sure to read it. That's the tip for the audience. And long story short, what is exciting here is that there are tips towards success. Is first, either you innovate by launching a new product on a customer line that you already have. So long story short, it will increase the revenue of the owner of that customer pool, or you leverage a product that you already have and you try to address a new customer segment. Hence, you don't cannibalize anybody in the corporate, and it, let's say, improve your chances of success. And by the way, the few corporate that we see successful in terms of innovation and launching business line, it's always that way, because they address a new customer segment with an existing product, or they offer a new product to a customer segment that they already own.
So I'm going to ask you a quick snappy question. 3 words. I want you to tell me what the words means for you, because you have covered a lot around corporate venturing and success, which is at the end of the day linked, to my mind, to business model and value proposition. And those are going to evolve, because if you have an existing product, which you are actually trying to sell to a new customer segment, or a new product you are targeting to an existing customer segment, it's all about aligning business model propositions together. So here are the 3 words. Service-led.
Yeah, good question. I believe that it's related to what you mentioned on business model. I believe that we hear a lot, for instance, it reminds me about prevention. That's something that we hear a lot in insurance, obviously, in cyber, for instance, specifically, because nobody really knows how to assess the risk. Hence, we are trying to move to preventing the risk itself. So far, I believe that it's much more a buzzword than something else, because the truth is that if every insurance company is talking about prevention, they are not ready to pay for it, really. And it's related to the business model. It's really tough to pay now for something that maybe will decrease your claim in the next, I don't know, 5-10 years. And if you take home insurance, usually we say that there is a claim every 8 years. So if you pay now a few €100, whereas maybe there will be a claim in 8 years from now, it's really tough in terms of business model to justify it. So I think it's very attractive, especially there are a lot of use cases. I mentioned home insurance. It could be the same on car insurance. It could be the same on even SMEs. Monitoring the cash position says a lot about whether the company will be still there in 3, 6, 12 months from now. So it says a lot about wearables helps anticipate your health in the next year. So it makes a lot of sense. I believe Matteo Carbon from the IoT would not disagree here that there is an opportunity. I still believe there is a challenge in terms of how you monetize that opportunity. Again, considering that insurance companies are not ready to pay now for something that they could benefit in 10 years from now.
So my second word is circular economy.
Yeah, on this one, I believe it could be related to new risks or new opportunities. It depends on the side you're watching that word. But yeah, I believe here it's a change, behavioral change in how we consume things. Again, I have in mind, for instance, around mobility, which I believe is really strong around that world, where especially in big cities, we are moving from car ownership to just moving from A to B, whatever the means, and then it's much more how you manage mobility as a service, for instance. But it could be on the supply chain as well, because if you are starting purchasing, let's say, food from the farmer which are nearby you, it revamp the logistic, the supply chain organization. Hence, it creates a new risk/opportunity for insurance companies. So, long story short, I believe it's revamping how we behave together, how we interact together, and how we purchase things. And obviously, it creates, I believe, new opportunities because every time you revamp something, it kills, obviously, an older business model, but it most of all creates a new business opportunity.
And the last one is behavioral science within the context of protect and prevent.
Yeah, so related to the first point, I strongly believe that there is an opportunity here in health, in life insurance, and I believe it could be helpful in terms of distributing insurance. One pain point in insurance is, and that's something I've been saying for years, but it's education. People don't understand why they should purchase an insurance policy. They do it when they have no choice, car, home, health. But when they have the choice, pet insurance, bike insurance, and pocket insurance, let's say, or any additional insurance policy, you need to explain them why they should do it. Hence, usually it lends to a very high cost of acquisition, a very rough process, having people engaging with the final customer, explaining and trying to convince them to buy something in insurance. Whereas I believe that leveraging data should help, again, either embed product and make it more obvious why it's relevant for the final customer. Again, I believe it's a good deal when you say, you take my insurance policy, I get your data, and I will suggest well-being things so that you will have a healthier lifestyle. I believe that there is no customer that don't want to have a healthier lifestyle. Then we are ready to make significant efforts or not. But I believe that everybody buys this idea to have a healthier behavior. Nobody wants to have an unhealthy behavior by design. Then whether you eat a salad or a burger, that's your choice. But time to time, you can make an effort and a few people will make efforts every day, other one a few times a week. But anyway, I believe that it could be very helpful in preventing things, in better explaining the value proposition of the insurance product, and it should increase, let's say, the distribution of insurance product, even for non-mandatory products.
So I would love to ask you my final question, Florian. What are your words of wisdom for our listener? What should we remember that is key to be successful today?
Yeah, so first, the first point is don't be afraid of what you're reading in newspaper. It's true there is a lot of money, but still there is a lot of opportunities to address in InsurTech. So don't consider that everything has been done. That's not true. On the other hand, it's not because you hear a lot and you see only few results that InsurTech doesn't work. It's far from true to say so. We still hear it even at a COMEX level among corporates. It's not true. I would say the value chain is revamped. InsurTech are addressing very big numbers. So it's a reality that you can make a big business in InsurTech. And the third point, I believe, is don't forget that technology is a means. And without technology, it's tougher to succeed. Mm-hmm. Because insurance companies have a lot of strengths. They have millions of customers. They have huge revenues, margin. They are making a lot of money. So if you don't have any competitive edge, it will be tough. And I believe that technology is a competitive edge because that's a threat for them. That's a downside. That's a pain point for them, for sure. So if you leverage technology, then there is an opportunity to take a significant piece of that huge cake, which is insurance.
Thank you, Florian, for your words of wisdom and everything you have shared with us today. Super grateful.
Thanks a lot for having me. And obviously, and as usual, if you don't agree with me, happy to have a discussion and learn a bit more from what you think from the ground.
Absolutely. And we'll provide information for all our listeners to be able to reach out to you, Florian Graillot at Astorya.vc.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.